All right, everyone, welcome. It is Thursday, October 12th, 2023, and this meeting of the MAPC Advanced Plans Committee is called to order. First item on the agenda is roll call, but before we do that, I would like to note for the record, we've had some changes in the composition of the committee. Our bylaws require that subdivision just have three county appointments, at least 3 county appointments plus at least 3 city appointments, which is a way to keep some balance. But the bylaws require advanced plans to be 3 city appointments, 3 county appointments, plus the chair, vice chair of MAPC. So when we had our recent elections at the MAPC level, Mr. Dool stopped being vice chair and became chair. And at that point, there were 4 county appointments on this committee, and one of them had to shift over to subdivision, and Mr. Dool selected to shift himself over. So he is no longer on this committee. Commissioner Rob Hartman resigned from MAPC, so we have an open seat. I understand that one will be filled fairly shortly or is in the process of being filled, but right now we're 1 person down. And as vice chair of MAPC, I am now on advanced plans and off of subdivision. So those changes, we're still in effect. All right, we've got to call roll. I'm here. Foster, Chuck Warren, I believe, is absent. Joe Johnson is here. Hugh Nix is absent. Cindy Miles
present.
Is John McKay, and that gives us a quorum of 4, so we will proceed. All right, and I would also like to note for the record, at the last MAPC meeting, we voted to end virtual participation in meetings. We will still allow virtual observation, but virtual participation will be ending since we already had notices that had gone out announcing the option of virtual attendance. We have some meetings that will still allow it, and this is the last advanced plans meeting that will allow virtual participation. Now we get to item 2 on the agenda, which is the previous meeting summary, and we have a slight problem there because there were only 4 people at the meeting and 2 of them are no longer on advanced plans. Bob Dool is on subdivision and Rob Hartman has resigned, which leaves us with just 2 people who can possibly approve the previous summary. I understand we were asked for a legal opinion on what we should do about this situation. Oh, we asked the city attorney, but would you care to comment? Or
Kirk Sponsel, Deputy County Councilor. If I may have just 1 second, look through the bylaws.
All right, thank you. I will say I looked and I couldn't find anything. My inclination is to simply ask the 2 members who were there to comment and see if they have noticed anything that needs to be corrected, and then accept and file, receive and file, but let's wait for a legal opinion on that. All right, we will postpone item 2 on the agenda until we hear from an attorney on the issue, which gets us to item 3, solar regulations moratorium. That's been moved up. I hope you all have the revised agenda because Scott is going to be making some comments and he's attending virtually and has something somewhere else to be a little bit later from now. So, Mary, are you going to start or is Scott going to start?
I'll just quickly introduce Scott. Recently, the Board of County Commissioners asked for and passed a resolution for a moratorium on the solar regulations. And so we're in the process of reviewing all of that. They've given us 180 days to do so. And so I'll just pass things off to Scott at this point, who's joining us virtually.
Hello and good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, good morning.
Yes.
All right. Well, it's good to see you all. Thanks for accommodating my schedule. I apologize that I'm not there in person, but am glad that I get an opportunity to go through this with you. In your packet, you should have received a staff report, and I'm going to use that staff report and go through that as part of this presentation. And the purpose today is really to lay out a roadmap on how we can fulfill the objectives that were delegated or assigned to both the Planning Commission and the Planning Department by the County Commission. And so today's to look at that roadmap, get your feedback on it, see any input that you've got on it. In terms of the background on this one, back in 2019 was when the zoning code and the comprehensive plan were originally updated to address solar and wind energy. From 2020 through earlier this year, 2023, we were looking at ways that we could better align the regulations in the zoning code, the requirements in the zoning code to the scale of different solar projects. There had been some input that we had collected with that. And then in September of this year, so not too long ago, as Mary indicated, the County Commission approved a moratorium, and that is in effect until March 20th. And you'll see that that date is pretty prominent in the process because that's our goal to accomplish this process by then. And they directed both the Planning Department and the Planning Commission to review the applicable zoning code provisions and to bring forward any proposed zoning code and or comprehensive plan amendments. And so you should have a copy. Hopefully we were able to get that distributed this morning of the signed resolution, so you can refer to that. But this is taken from the resolution. In terms of the analysis and the process goal, again, March 20th is the goal. Really, we want to get this wrapped up by March 19th. And in order to do that, we've got to review the existing zoning code provisions and again, bring forward any changes to either the zoning code or the comprehensive plan. In terms of the process, we're proposing that the steering committee would be the MAPC advanced plans, and that you all would be responsible and assist with reviewing reports, materials, accepting public comments, and then at the end of the day, really advising whether or not if any changes are needed and how those changes would be a good fit for Wichita and Sedgwick County. Because again, this is not just, since this is in the zoning code, it addresses not just unincorporated Sedgwick County, but also the city of Wichita. And in order to accomplish this by the March 20th date, we anticipate that the advanced plans would likely have to move to a schedule where you all would meet twice a month. And as we see that, as you can see in the schedule later on, for October, November, and December, possibly in January. In terms of public input, there's multiple opportunities for the public to comment on the process. One of those formats would be here at the Advanced Plans Committee meetings. Another one would be through an open house. We're proposing to do an online survey as well. And then, of course, through the different meetings and various boards all the way through, if there are any changes that get presented to the Planning Commission and ultimately to the governing bodies. In terms of Sedgwick County cities, we know that there are cities who are very interested in the process. They've expressed that in the past. So there would be multiple opportunities for them to provide comment. Also, they could request a presentation. And then in terms of timing and duration, again, we're shooting for getting this to the County Commission by that March 20th date. In terms of our timeline, it's projected that we would have something, a report to the County Commission by March 13th. So what's being shown on the screen is the flow diagram for this proposed process. And again, this is not something that's set in stone, but rather a roadmap. If things go faster, then we can move faster through the process, or even possibly eliminate some meetings. But this at least gives us a roadmap for how to accomplish it. Then in addition to the flow diagram, there are some dates. There's a listing of dates with the meetings. One thing that's been identified is that in January, there's quite a few meetings with CABs and DABs and others. that series of meetings, we may be able to spread that out a little bit. We'll have to see again how we're able to move through the process. One of the things to consider going through this process will be the holidays. So we'll have to see how those meetings line up with the holidays and if we can move them up or if we can move them back just a little bit. So with that, that's what we've got to present this time. Next time, we'd like to talk with you about the open house event and what the materials would look like for that. But at this time, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Scott from the commission?
Scott, the only question I have, are there any of these meetings that where we're looking for public input where people will be able to provide input virtually other than the survey?
That's a good question. Some of that will depend on how the meetings by other organizations are conducted. So the DAB meetings, for instance, if the materials go there, I think almost all of them provide for a virtual option. The CAB meetings I'm not as familiar with. So if they do already, then that would be another format that they could provide virtually. But those are the ones that I can think of. The DAB meetings for sure, and the online survey. And then as well, folks can always submit comments to the planning department. We will be putting together a document that is a record of those public comments that are received. And I anticipate that we will be providing you with that document on a regular basis so that you can see those comments that come in.
All right, thanks, Scott. Any other questions from the commission? All right, thank you. Are there any members of the public here in chambers who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, are there any? Oh, sorry, one.
I just have a question. Is this available for us on these packets? Oh, okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other members of the public in chambers who have anything to say? Yes, sir.
Yes, Madam Chair, I wouldn't. We are
Can
going
it-
to the virtual capability comment, but you know that Mr. Hill has a prepared statement that he might know.
Okay, can I ask you to go up to the podium because everybody attending virtually can't hear you unless you're speaking into the mic, and give us your name and address, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Mark Brady. I'm an attorney with the Polsinelli Law Firm. I'm here on behalf of the Invenergy Solar Energy Company and the Chisholm Trail Solar Project. I just wanted to verify that the people that are participating remotely will have an opportunity to make a comment, because I do know that Mr. Hill, who's on the screen as a remote participant, does have a prepared statement that he'd like to make known to the committee. And I would like to perhaps follow up after his comments if possible. I guess the one thing I would like to maybe note at the outset for my initial 3 minutes is I just want to make sure I fully understand the limitation on virtual participation as the process unfolds. I know there's been a couple of questions about that. And I know that apparently there was a vote of a previous meeting of the committee to limit virtual participation. And I would like to at least reserve the possibility of having virtual participation as we go through the process, depending on how that unfolds and where we land on the procedures. I think it'd be important to allow for people, either subject matter experts on zoning matters, people that, for whatever reason, I don't know, Scott is a perfect example for scheduling, is unable to participate, so that if virtual participation could remain a viable option as this committee works through the process. I just think that would seem to be important to make sure that everyone has a well-informed and well-reasoned view of the issues and as we work through this process.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? I would note your 3 minutes is a discrete, unless one of us on the commission asks you a question, you won't be able to come back and comment after the virtual participants. Okay. I will also say the vote on whether to continue virtual participation was a very tight vote, 6-5, as I recall. It may be revisited. I don't know. But I agree with you. It certainly makes for better public participation if we have that option available. But right now we don't.
Thank you.
All right. Any other commissioner have a question? All right. Are there any other members of the public here in chambers who would like to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, are there any members of the public attending virtually who would like to speak on this item?
Yes. Madam Chair,
Yes.
yes.
Please give us your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Michael Hill, and I'm Associate General Counsel for Permanent and Local Affairs with Invenergy LLC, here on behalf of the Chisholm Trail Solar Project. My practice at Invenergy includes national responsibility for working with communities to update renewable energy ordinances in support of Invenergy's projects nationwide. In this role, I have authored ordinances and ordinance amendments. I participated in over 30 ordinance review proceedings across a dozen states. Prior to joining Invenergy, I participated in similar regulatory reviews for the telecommunications industry, including numerous ordinance reviews, rulemakings at the federal level, statewide regulatory proceedings, and the like. Prior to that, my land use regulatory practice did provide me with ample opportunities for assistance with policymaking, ordinance development, and best practice review across several rapidly changing regulatory environments. And I have previous experience as an urban planner, which I think has provided me with much needed insight and useful perspective from both sides of the regulatory table. So,
Excuse me, may I just mention that we have your comments, your written comments right in front of us, and we can
Yes.
read them. You might want to use your 3 minutes more for a little more focus if you're so inclined.
I appreciate that, and I would just like to just reinforce what we included in the written comments. That while we do support the APC's mission to ensure that best practices are adopted for solar facility development, we would like to offer some suggestions how that might actually be implemented. And as you see in the written comments, first, a comprehensive review of the solar ordinance is already included in the Unified Zoning Code update packet that I think has already been distributed. That was part of the process we understand has been ongoing for 2.5 years. Substantial effort has already been put into that process. And we would like to, we believe that there's already been ample opportunity to reevaluate these regulations since they've already been reviewed, and we'd hate to see that such effort just go completely to waste. Second, if additional review is deemed to be needed, then I think it's imperative that the APC limit the focus of that review to determine what the desired impact and the end product should be. And because Sedgwick County's existing solar ordinance is already quite robust, it's actually one of the most robust ones I've seen in my practice at Invenergy. But if additional review is deemed necessary, it should be focused on specific items of concern that remain unaddressed, either in the recommendations or just through implementation of that existing ordinance. And this will ensure that this review is efficient and effective, especially given the time and effort the county staff has already put into the overall code review over the last 2.5 years. And we also think it's critical for the review process to have a clear statement of the intended objectives and outcomes, so to help guide this review and guide this committee's efforts. And third, we also like to just mention that public review and engagement in this context, where professional expertise is needed, is best saved for when potential solutions have already been developed and proposed, rather than upfront. We encourage the APC to first determine potential solutions for code amendment, followed by involvement of public comment. Thanks for the time today. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I would be, but my wife is also traveling this week. Otherwise, I'd be happy to be. And we look forward to working with the APC for the future solar development in Sedgwick County. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Just so I'm clear in my own mind, what you would like to see happen is for the moratorium to disappear and for the existing solar regulations to come into effect. Is that where you're going with this?
So in an ideal world, that's what we would prefer, but we recognize the moratorium has been adopted and that there's been a choice to undertake review of the regulations. So we're asking that review be focused, that particular areas of concern be identified in the existing regulations, which again, we believe to be quite robust, and that the recommendations that were developed in the comprehensive review over the last 2.5 years be reviewed. That work was extensive and we believe comprehensive. And rather than reinventing the wheel, we think that a lot of that can be borrowed upon and built upon, perhaps to save some time and make the overall process itself a lot more efficient, rather than starting over in its entirety.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the commission for the speaker? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public attending virtually who would like to speak on this item? All right, hearing none, let's bring it back to the commission for discussion. I believe the recommended action is to receive and file. Any discussion?
So move.
We have a motion from Commissioner Johnson and a second from Commissioner Miles to receive and file. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed, say no. Motion carries 4-0. All right, thank you, Scott. All right, next item on the agenda is a vice chair election. The bylaws require the MAPC vice chair to be a member of this committee, but they don't say anything at all about the vice chair of MAPC being the chair of advanced plans. But apparently it's a tradition, and it's a tradition which Commissioner Dool chose to follow, and he has appointed me as chair. The bylaws also say that a vice chair should be elected by the committee. There's nothing in the bylaws, by the way, that says a vice chair on any level, either at the commission level or the committee level, needs to succeed a chair. Again, that has been a tradition, but it's not a requirement. So I sent out an email earlier and asked if anyone was interested in being vice chair of advanced plans. And Mr. Johnson responded positively, and I thank him for that. Is there anyone else interested in fulfilling the job, with the understanding that it does not necessarily imply that you would have to be chair next year? All right, in that case, I would hope for a motion.
I move that we elect Joe Johnson as the vice chair for the planning commission.
Excellent. We have a motion from Commissioner Miles, a second from Commissioner McKay to elect Joe Johnson as vice chair of advanced plans. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say no. Mr. Johnson, thank you very much. I appreciate your willingness to serve.
You realize I did this because you told me you would never be absent.
And at this point, I have to inform you that I will be missing the next meeting. Sorry.
That's okay, Joe. I'll serve as the vice.
Will be good. If you want, I can give you my cheat sheet. It's pretty extensive. Okay.
That would be wonderful.
All right, item 5 on the agenda, notification policy for zoning cases, and the recommended action on this is to share comments and preferences. So, Mary, you're up.
Well, good morning, commissioners. We continue our discussion on notification policies. This time we're up here, or I'm up here to talk about a request from the city council at a work session they had in July that we look at a few things. Next slide, there we go. Get to that part. And some of the things we've been decided to look at are more extensively have to do with postcards as a form of notification. How might we handle languages other than English, which is what we've been doing up until now, and maybe making our letters more legible to people. I can tell you as a planner, and any planner in this department that takes planner of the day calls, at least a couple times a week for me, I get a call from someone who's saying, I got this letter and I don't know what it means. And it's because we're including quite a bit of information. So we're going to examine whether we can make that more clear to people exactly why did they get it, what's it about, and do they need to do anything about it? So as I said, city council workshop took place in July. Next slide. And looking at that meeting, we presented information on practices and policies that we have right now. Talked a little bit about the research we've done from other communities, and maybe what could some of the options be should we choose to change that. Okay, next slide. So here's what we found. There is a matrix that looks like this in your packet that is easy to read. And we had 19 communities that we reached out to, many of them in Kansas, but not exclusively. We went into Oklahoma, Arkansas, and even Missouri. And out of those 19, they sent us samples of what they use for a notification letter or postcard. Yeah, we even went to Colorado. So turns out one city in Colorado, Broomfield, I believe it was, that they'll allow you to use a postcard. They'd have no objection to it in lieu of a letter. However, state statutes there say you must include the legal description. And legal descriptions can be very, very short, or they can be a page long. So it's very rarely used. So for the bulk of them, it was, we're using a letter. And we asked them about languages. Not one community out there is using a language other than English at this time. Although when I asked them that question, they thought, several people responded that they thought that would be a great idea if we could figure out how to do that. So, you know, we looked at what's in their letter, who receives the letter. We've talked about this before about who receives the letter. You have your the legal minimum on who has to receive the letter, but we've talked about perhaps expanding that beyond what's legally required. Here in Wichita, we actually do exceed what's legally required to some level. So, and then we ask, you know, who sends the letter? In most cases, probably 15, 16 out of the 19, the government entity, their planning department, they send out the letter, but in a few cases, it was the applicant's responsibility to send out that letter, and they had to provide an affidavit proving that they did so. And some include maps, some do not. Some had renderings, and some had the planner of whatever planners assigned to that particular case. Sometimes all they had was maybe the chair of the planning commission. And I think a lot of it depended upon the size of the community. So next slide, please. So the overall question here is, you know, what's a good fit for us? Because we're not a small town, but you know, we're not you know, Los Angeles or New York either. So the question is, what's a good fit? And the minimum information for Kansas is, you know, what is the case? You know, who receives the information? We may include a map for clarification, but we're not required to. And then where and when is the meeting? Okay, so for the state of Kansas, it's very, very basic. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now here's a sample, first page only of the one that City of Wichita, Sedgwick County, this is what we send out. We actually have 4 pages of information that we send out. And we even have a section on there, about a half a page that lists every zoning district that is available that runs out of this department. And so I think I mentioned at our last meeting, I think there's been just a wee bit of mission creep over the years. Let's add this and let's add this to the letter and let's add that to the letter, just to be in response to people's desire for clarification. So that sample, by the way, is on page 9 of your packet. Next slide, please. Good. Again, what's good? What's a good fit for us? One is to remove all that zoning district list. That's one possibility. We also want to adjust the text for quick reading. You know, when people are advertising things, you want to use the plainest language you can, not because people don't understand complex, they don't have a sophisticated vocabulary. It's just that you can read it fast. It's clearly understood, very quickly, and they're not having to pick up the phone and call and say, what does that mean? And so we also want to know what's missing from our message. Okay, next slide. So we're looking at maybe a postcard would be a good idea. This, the sample, and again, it's in your packet there. This would be 1/2 of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Okay, so it's 8.5 by 4 1/4. Front and then back. This is front and back. It's entirely possible. Now, this is just kind of an example, but what we could include on ours, including a map of the area. And that's why we really need this size. We can't go smaller because maps are very hard to read, especially street names and things like that. So we looked at this, like I said earlier, one community allows the use of a postcard as an option. Before, in one of my earlier presentations, we talked about pricing. We estimate that it costs $2.64 to mail out a letter. That includes labor and postage and paper and such. Right now, we estimate $1.80 per card. And the way we come with that is that, you know, printers have certain cutoffs. You print up to this many, you get this price. You print up to that many, you get that price. So obviously a case that has just, you know, maybe 30 recipients of a notice on a particular case, that's going to cost a little bit more. But, you know, we also had one where we were notifying over 900 properties with Old Town. And so that's going to be way lower than this $1.80. But this is our best guess without going in and doing a really super in-depth study on what this could cost. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, let me talk a little bit about language other than English. No community is doing that so far that we surveyed. We contacted a language translation service, and this came recommended to us because they were a little bit lower price than other services. And we estimate, based on the amount of information that we put into our letters, that, you know, 4 pages and such, that we're looking at $132 per letter. And that's a lot of money. I estimate that comes to about $30,000 a year. And another option is to do Google Translate. Now, I took a couple of our different staff reports, the kind that you guys get, you know, every couple of weeks, and put it through Google Translate and ask people who speak and read that language, you know, how good is this? Maybe it doesn't have to be perfect, because we all know about language. Language is different from one region to another region of a country, but it's like, could somebody understand what's going on? And it was pretty good. And so that's another option that we have, and then simply mail that out. The thing is, you'd be mailing out an English staff report, a Vietnamese staff report, and a Spanish staff report, possibly. So now instead of 4 pages, we're up to 12. And I'm sure a lot of people out there are going to go, why am I getting a notice in Vietnamese? What am I supposed to do with this? And they're searching through to find the language that they read. So there's a bit of a little bit of difficulty there. So we could include translated letters to everybody if we needed to. There are other ways. We have a service here with the city where, and you know, you all know our planner, Christina Reith. Christina is fluent in Spanish, and because of that, she is authorized by the city to provide translation services, not just to the planning department, but to any department that would need it. And the same holds true of people with other language skills, and they can help us and we can help them. So one option is, if somebody calls and says, I got this letter, help me. And we will find someone that can help them with that letter, maybe read that letter to them. That's an option. So we have that here. The question is, how would we best manage it? And then, of course, the recipient themselves could use an online translation service. So taking that letter, scanning it and sending it through, because, you know, Google Translate, it takes a little more time, but there's no charge to use that service. So that's definitely an option that we have here. All righty.
Mary, I have a comment. Rather than translating to different languages, couldn't we just put a sentence in there in a couple of different languages directing them?
Yes. That was another idea, is that at the top of the letter, if you need this in Spanish, click here. And maybe then we would have the translated version on our website and there'd be a link to it. And then again, I talk about Spanish and Vietnamese because those are the most common languages that we've run into. Doesn't mean we can't have something else, but that in this community, that tends to be where things lean.
Are you ready for more questions?
I
Mary, or are
am.
you still in the middle?
Nope, I'm
All right,
ready. I'm ready.
I like what Cindy said about referencing the language. It just seems to me that the costs are prohibitive for so many reasons to try and provide every language to everybody. But I also think the legal description is another thing that might be done by reference. Most people look at a legal description and it's gibberish to them. I don't think it's really doing any good to include it on the notice. One thing I did, and I like the idea of the postcard. I know when I purge my junk mail, if I have to open an envelope, that makes it more likely it goes straight into the junk mail pile. So I think it's actually more likely to be read if it's a postcard, as well as the cost difference. The thing about language, I'm all for removing as much legalese as possible. And I would also like to suggest that the very first sentence be why people are getting this. I think all of you and all of us are used to the planning process, but for a lot of people, when they get a notice from the city, their first response is, oh my God, I'm in some kind of trouble. So if you just, I think it was Mays that had the first line that said, you're getting this because you own property near a zoning case. And that first sentence, I think, was really important to just calm people down and get them to start reading the rest of it. But other than that, I think this is a worthwhile endeavor for a lot of good reasons, not least of which is overall cost to the department.
Amen.
Any other,
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Mary, I have a question. We keep, everything goes back to dollars and cents and costs to the department.
Yeah.
Who does the printing and everything now? Does the department do it? Or they
Yes.
hire them? Okay. Would it be cheaper if you're gonna have a vast volume as far as time for staff and stuff to subcontract that out to an organization? And by that, you might get a better discount because of the volume you're gonna have during the year.
Quite possibly. The thing is, you have, like today, when you have 5 cases, something like that, and they're all individual letters. A different planner is on each case. The case number is different, so the volume only goes so far. But yes, in terms of just outsourcing our letters as a suggestion, is that what you're saying,
I'm
Commissioner?
just asking a question, not
Yeah.
making a suggestion. We keep talking about dollars and cents and they go up and down depending on the volume and stuff.
Mhm.
And I thought, I don't know how many notifications you give in a year, but I bet it's more than 2 or 3.
Yes.
And I would think that, I'm not saying outsource them. I don't know if we've checked into seeing outsource them. And to me, it'd be very simple for each staff person to say, all right, here's the deadline. It's like you got a deadline now, you got it ready. And it goes to printer, and printer's got a deadline to get it back to you.
Right. That's something worth looking into. Thank you.
I also think that what Debbie said here a while ago, the notification legal description is very, very important because 99% of the people read don't even know what they're talking, don't even know what it is. Because in a lot of cases, you have to read them in reverse to get them right. Unless it's just lots so-and-so subdivision, so-and-so. I had one other thing, but I'm getting old and I forgot what it was.
The idea of outsourcing, however, I think we to be very careful. I don't know what the city and county has done as far as competition. If we would outsource everything, I think if we pick and choose to outsource, all we're doing is raising the cost of the in-house printing because we aren't maximizing our in-house capabilities. And I'm certainly for outsourcing anything we can.
No, Joe, that's what I was talking about. You know, this is Sedgwick and city notification comes out of this office. So that's why I was saying, just say, we're going to do it all from here.
Do I understand correctly? Staff has the option to use whichever option is most cost effective?
We are not doing that at this time. Everything is done in-house. Now, understand, I used that Old Town as an example, but that is an outlier. There really aren't a lot of cases where we send out 900 notices. The average, as I reported before, is probably around 60 to 70. I think we used our estimates at 70.
So if staff, do we need to do anything to allow staff to simply use their best judgment about keeping the cost down? Because I assume you all do that as often as you can, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that would be something for us to look into is.
Well, yes, there's the time and effort of getting the comparison costs, which is an issue, but
Yeah.
I'm assuming that staff, if they have a case where they're going to make 900 notifications, would know enough that it was worth their time to go get an outsourced.
Mhm.
But I do think we can count on staff to do that.
I do remember what I was going to think. Well,
Oh, good. Go ahead.
we've discussed this before, and the thing that probably discussed more than anything else was who we're going to send a notification to. And, you know, all the way from everybody that lives within whatever the boundary line is to just owners. Right now, it's just owners.
Mhm.
Once in a while, you will send out somebody else. If they come to a meeting here and they get names on the list, then you'll send it out to them. But what's the feeling of this group on who, my opinion, is you send it out to the people that owns the property.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
think
law
we
today.
had talked about sending out to renters, which trying to find out who's renting at any given moment on a certain property would eat up a lot of staff time, I suspect. And sending out to a larger radius than the current, I think we're meeting state statute, but not much beyond that. That's exponential. That rapidly gets to be a way larger group of people that had to be notified. Cindy?
Well, I think that I don't think research really needs to be done to find out who the renters are as much as we just deliver.
Send it
something
to the
that
address?
address.
That's a good point.
But I
Mary?
also think we have long-term renters in areas that, you know, again, if I'm renting a property and I am going to have something, we're gonna provide a conditional use permit for somebody to have an event center right out my back door. I'd want to know that as a renter. Whether I own the property or not, I'd still want to know that.
So Mary, if the requirement or the request was made that notifications be sent out, and if the property owner was not at the address in the notification area, that an additional notification be sent to the address, would that be a feasible thing to ask staff to do, or at least to try for a while and see what kind of workload it ended up being?
You know, it really depends upon what parcel are we talking about that's part of this proposed change. You get somewhere near an apartment complex and poof, you've got 500 that you need to know, 300 you have to notify, versus an maybe just a kind of a traditional neighborhood where maybe there's only a few. We'd really have to study what the likelihood of that is.
And can I ask for a legal opinion? We can't just like do this when we think it's a good idea. If we do it, we have to do it for everybody, right? All the time. If we notify occupants as opposed to owners.
Kirk Sponsel, Deputy County Counselor. I will express my caution on opining on this just because I know it came out of the city and I don't want to overstep too much. I would just say that generally speaking, notice requirements are set forth in our unified zoning code and by statute. So that's where that's where the directives and that's where the rules come into play, is within those. And so potential changes or potential actions are always subject to those code provisions.
Can I ask, do you think it would do any good if we added a note? And here we are adding stuff again to each notification, but added a note and said something along the lines of, if you are an absentee landowner, please notify your renters that this case is coming up. Is that
Well, there's
at
nothing
least
that
something?
prevents us from doing that.
Well, maybe we can follow up with that. That would at least be something.
Mhm.
I don't know how many of them would actually do it, but we could at least ask.
Well, following up on what Ms. Foster said, is there any way to enforce what we just talked about? That's to me the hardest thing about it, is that, some people be nice and sure they'll do it, but some people probably don't even like the people they're renting to, so.
Suspect not.
Well, I think in addition to that, I mean, one of the things that might prohibit them actually telling that renter is that could result in them moving out, and they don't want them to move out. They don't want to lose them as a renter, but it certainly could impact them because, again, I'm just using the event center because they're noisy, or can be very noisy, that they may lose that renter anyways, because an event center has now been built out their back door and they don't want to deal with the noise.
Mary's comment about apartment complexes really was telling to me, we've talked about the economics of all of this, and it could rapidly become a serious economic issue. I don't think we're going to be able to ask that all renters or occupants be notified. That doesn't seem practical on a constant level, but I would suggest at least considering the option of asking landlords. I mean, some of them won't, but maybe some of them will. Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, certainly looking at our notification examples, I only see renters mentioned one time.
Yeah.
So you've done a good body of research here.
Mhm.
It appears to me they've all been through this.
Yeah.
They've all stayed with owners only.
Yeah, and in that example, it wasn't a requirement.
Right.
It was just, they recommended that you contact non-owner occupants.
So I
No
would say
requirement to do so.
we don't try to reinvent the wheel here until we see that number increasing dramatically.
Mhm.
We probably ought to just stay with owners as the law requires.
So I guess another interpretation of that is maybe they haven't had brought this forth to discuss whether or not they should do that. And the other thing is, why should we not lead? Why should we follow what everybody else is doing? I mean,
I don't think we're following. We're just we're the same thing. But I have no qualms with what you're suggesting with a sentence saying, would you contact your renters and notify them of this? It's they don't have to do it. I don't think we can require them to do it.
No, we can't.
Okay, any other comments or questions or discussion on this topic? Have we given you enough to work with, Mary?
Yes, you have.
All righty.
Thank you once
And
again.
that is our recommended action, was to do just what we did, so we're good.
All right.
All right, thank you. We are now at item 6. Mr. Thompson is going to give us an update on a bunch of initiatives.
Yes, Brian Thompson, administrative division for planning department, and I am coming up on my first year here, so it's been a good learning experience. And Scott asked me just to do a quick rundown. I'm not going to go through the whole packet. Obviously, you guys have it, so just wanted to let you guys know how busy it's been. Obviously, you have been here at MAPC, so you're aware, but with MAPC meetings and non-subdivision cases, we are already at mid-October at 216 cases. which is on pace to be the highest in recent years, and actually over the last 10 years, we will be, because we're at, like I said, at 216 mid-October, and we still have the 26th meeting for October, and then November and December. So it has been a busy time. And then with that, we've been down staff too, because we just hired back in June Greg Sheeran and then Brad Etherly last month. So it's been busy with less staff. So it's good to bring new people on to help with those cases. And then we also still have a couple more people to hire within the advanced plans division. But with that, like I said, subdivision or non-sub has been very busy. About 13 of the meetings have been over staff capacity. So they're keeping them hopping and running with non-sub cases. Subdivision is just a little bit less than last year, but on pace of what we have the previous years. We're at 57 for mid-October, and last year was the big year when we had 78. But within that, Scott likes to look at the sub lots per year and the actual number of lots. Last year, there were only 1,948. And so far this year, there's already 2,357. So a big jump in subdivision lots this year. So keeping them busy there with just Neil. And now it's nice to have Greg Sheeran, who is working under Neil to learn, since obviously Neil will be retiring. It's coming up in January. So it's coming quick. So we're going to miss that. And then staffing wise, just like I mentioned, we are actually for the first time fully staffed in the current plans division. And then in advanced plans, we still have 2 positions. Well, actually 1 now. We just made an offer and had an acceptance from Justin Constantino, who will be starting October 30th. So that's exciting to have that principal planner coming in. And then we are still looking for a senior planner. And then for the first time in several years, we'll be fully staffed for FTE here in the planning department. And then after that, I know you guys are aware of the short-term rentals and those things. You just said if you had any questions, but other than that, it's just been busy time here in the planning department. And that's all I have. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions from the committee to Brian? All right, the recommended action is to receive and file. Would someone care to make a motion?
So moved.
Yep.
So moved.
Okay, Mr. McKay moved and
Second.
Mr. Johnson seconded to receive and file. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say no. Motion carries 4-0. All right, we're to the public comments section of this meeting. Are there any members of the public here in chambers who would like to speak? Are there any members of the public attending virtually who would like to speak?
I'd like to speak briefly.
All right, you have 3 minutes, and please start with your name and address.
Well, Richard Ruth, I'm in 3907 East Funston Street in Grandview Heights. I just wanted to bring up a couple things. The 132.50 for a translation letter, I would think that would be a one-time cost for 1 letter. So if you had 40 letters going out, it would not be 132.50 for each letter. Unless the translator was making royalties on their translations. I think too that if we were using a template, that we wouldn't have the need for each case because really common names, zoning case numbers, those aren't going to change with the translation. So that might be something there. I don't think that putting the onus on the landlord to announce this to his renters is necessarily a good idea, but I think that having 1 letter go to each, while it increases the number of letters or cards, I think that would be a good enough way of letting people who actually live on the property know that something is coming their way. I heard a comment about 99% of people don't understand those letters. I'm not sure that that's true. I would hope not, but I do think that they can easily go into the trash. Postcards, I think, are less likely. And also, I would also say, Wichita's public engagement has been around for a long time, and I think we sort of led the way, and we received awards at some time in the past for our public engagement efforts. So obviously, this board chose to dismantle that somewhat by disallowing public engagement like we're doing right now. I kind of understand it, and hopefully WIN can make a concerted effort to help educate the public on how to maximize these presentations in front of boards, so we're not repeating ourselves and we're not wasting everyone's time, and that the concerns are legitimate concerns, right? And that's all I have for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the speaker? All right, thank you. Are there any other people members of the public attending virtually who would like to speak on this item?
I would like to speak.
All right, name and address, and you have 3 minutes, please.
Claire Willenberg, 1402 North Garland, North Riverside neighborhood. Just wanted to express my disappointment in that there will no longer be viewing remotely and public comment after October, I guess. I think it limits public engagement so much for those people who are at work or who are unable to attend in person. And then just a comment, I don't know if it's possible, back when you were discussing letters going out and whether you could do renters, could it not be possible to set a limit to the number of apartments or units, like sixplexes, so that you don't have an apartment complex with 50 or 200 people, so that renters at whatever limit you set, whether it's duplex, triplex, sixplex, only those are allowed? Because I would view our code as the minimum that we are required to do, and maybe that's wrong, but can't we lead forward with more than our minimum requirements? That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I think that is an idea worth pursuing. Are there any questions for the speaker? All right, seeing none, thank you. Are there any members of the public attending virtually who would like to speak on this? Speak today. All right, hearing none, I will say, in some degree, you're preaching to the choir. There are some of us who really would like to see the virtual opportunity continue. And I will say, you will be able to observe the meetings virtually. You simply won't be able to participate in them starting at the next meeting. All right, I believe that's all the public comments. We do need to go back and talk about approving our summary again. Have we gotten a decision on that, sir?
Yes, Kirk Sponsel, Deputy County Counselor. So the MAPC and subdivisions are subject to Robert's rules. Per Robert's rules, you can vote on approval of minutes, even if you weren't previously present during the meeting. I know that hasn't been our traditional practice, but that is allowed.
All right, thank you. All right, has everybody, I hope, read Mr. McKay?
Is that just for this committee or the planning commission and like the subdivision also?
That would be all of them.
Robert's rules applies to all of us.
No, but we have our rule, you have to have a quorum to do that.
I know. Well, we have a quorum at this meeting. It's just that only 2 of us in this quorum were actually at the meeting of the minutes. So that's why we wanted legal, because it's a little complicated and screwy, which is what legal is here for. Thank you. All right, so I think under Robert's rules, we can vote on approving. Are we actually approving? Hang on, I need to get exactly the right word. The minutes of the September, thank you, September 14th meeting.
I move to approve.
Let somebody who is there do. All right, are there any corrections or comments to the minutes of the September 14 meeting? Oh, can I have a motion to approve? Preferably from someone who is there, Mr. Johnson. And who else was there?
I move we approve the
Cindy.
summary of the September 14th meeting.
Okay.
I second it.
We have a motion from Mr. Johnson and a second from Ms. Miles to approve per the September 14th meeting summary. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say no. Motion carries 4-0. Woohoo, we did it. Okay. And
Deborah, I have a
yep,
question for you.
yes.
How is it possible for me to bring a motion back that we allow virtual attendance by the commission as done by the city and county?
I believe the bylaws say any member, and Mr. Sponsel can correct me, but the bylaws say any member can bring a motion. I would suggest that it be brought to the entire MAPC on a day, ideally when all 14 of us are there, if we can arrange that. Because if it's the same group of 12 people, we're going to get the same vote we did the last time.
Well, maybe not. We didn't really vote on the motion that way. 'Cause remember,
That's correct.
I tried to do a substitute motion was ruled out
yeah.
of order. And that's what I was going to move.
I think given the fact that we're getting this public comment, given the fact that it was such a close vote, I personally would like to see it come back before MAPC for more discussion, ideally somewhere closer to the top of the agenda so that everybody isn't exhausted and wanting to go home more than they're wanting to discuss. I think we need to discuss it again.
I'll be happy to make that motion.
Excellent. I would be happy to second it when we get to MAPC, except I won't be there at the next meeting, but yeah, I'm getting a pacemaker, people. I can't be there on the 25th. Sorry. So it beats other alternatives. Okay. Next meeting, item 8 on the agenda is Thursday, November 9th, 2023 at 10 a.m. There will be no virtual option unless something changes. I would ask everybody on this committee to keep your mornings open on the days of every MAPC meeting, because I suspect we will be doubling up our advanced plans meetings for the next month or two at least. Is there any other business that anyone needs to discuss? Mr.
What am I
Sponsel?
missing? Why can't I bring it up today?
Well, because we're just a committee. I mean, we can.
No, at the MAPC meeting.
You can.
I don't have to wait till the 23rd. When you're
No,
done.
yeah, today.
You'll be here today, right?
I will be here today, yes.
Kirk Sponsel, Deputy County Counselor. Just a point of clarification. I know in the agenda, it says that the next meeting is November 9th at 10 o'clock. I would want to clarify that it was referenced by Scott Wadle during his presentation on the moratorium that he believed it would be appropriate if the Advanced Plans Committee met every 2 weeks. And also I would point out that on our screen right now, it says next meeting Thursday, October 26, 2023 at 10 o'clock. I think the contemplation or question was if you are willing to call a special meeting for October 26, 2023 at 10 o'clock.
Okay, so is there any discussion on this? Can we just ask, can I ask?
I will be here. I'm always having surgery that day.
Okay. All right.
Which is why I say, whatever we're gonna vote on, well, I don't want to be here today. You're not gonna be here.
Well, and just a point of clarification, that is up to you as chair, whether or not you want to call a special meeting. No vote.
So, all right, no vote needed. In that case, I will call for a special meeting of the Advanced Plans Committee on Thursday, October 26th, 2023 at 10 a.m. So please, everyone, put that on your calendar. And at that point, hopefully we'll have more detail about any other special meetings that will be needed. Okay.
Is that meeting for a specific reason?
It's
I think that needs to be in
it's
whatever.
for because of more meetings needed to discuss the solar.
That's
Yeah, okay. Okay, Our next meeting is October 26th. Is there any other business we need to discuss? In that case, meeting adjourned.